This is SaintCast, brought to you by a Catholic and a Protestant walk into a bar. And we're back for part 2 of the St. Patrick's Day SaintCast. Pope Celestine christened our dear Maewyn Suckett as Patrick. Finally, a sensible name. He then sent Patrick, to Ireland after a failed attempt by another priest to evangelize the island. So Patrick, along with a following of 12 other priests, set out for the land of Ire. Their first stop wasn't really a success. The Druids had seen them coming, probably warned by the devil, so they decided to go up shore a bit. He first set foot at Skerries Harbor, and then traveled north to a village near the mouth of the River Boyne. There, he preached to the Irish people and performed his first miracle. I don't know what it was, but it must have been awesome. He left one of his companions there to continue the work, and the rest of them traveled on to Slemish. The first thing the chieftain of Slemish, Diku, did was try to kill him. Instead, impressed by Patrick and his companions, he gave them a barn in Saul. That's how you say it. It was the first building to be consecrated in Ireland as a church. Patrick then tried to see his former master, dear old Milchu, but Milchu wasn't really much for reunions. And so he gathered to himself all of his riches and burned himself to death in his fort, which just sounds excessive. Sometime later, Patrick heard of a special feast being held at Tara by the Ard Righ, or High King of Ireland, Lyre. The Druids were going to show up there along with many of the chieftains of the land. So Patrick decided it was time to show up and kick the Druids right in their sacred hazelnuts. The story of that epic meeting went something like this. Around Easter on March 26, 433, King Lyre commanded that all the fires be put out in the country the day before his big feast. That is, until he lit the first one at his place. Patrick, being a rebel, went to Slane, the hill across from Tara, where the king's fort was, and lit the Paschal fire for Easter. As you might have guessed, it didn't really go over too well with the king or the Druids. The Druids were like, "If we don't put out this fire tonight, it'll take over all of Ireland." Self-fulfilling prophecy right there. So they tried to put it out, and failed. So they tried again, with the same result. They then tried to attack Patrick, and failed, because he was under divine protection. The next morning, Patrick went up the hill, decked out to the nines in his full episcopal robes and holding the mitre and the crozier. The Druids, who hadn't thought of bringing their own costumes, were scared dungless. They began to utter incantations and threw all the curses and spells that their demoniac-addled minds could conjure, which apparently was only a dark cloud of darkness. Patrick, who sensed the Elijah versus the prophets of Baal vibe going on, dared them to get rid of the cloud, since it was throwing shade on his awesome episcopal attire. They tried, and failed, and tried again, and failed again, and on and so forth. Then Patrick prayed, and immediately the sun pierced through the cloud and dispelled it. So then, the big archdruid, Lochru, got up and decided the best way to solve this was by levitating in the air? Nathaniel, did you get this from The Last Airbender? No? New Advent? Seriously? Okay. Yeah, that was the best Lochru could come up with. So Patrick knelt down and prayed again, and Lochru fell out of the sky and splattered on a rock. Fitting end, I guess. After that, or whatever the actual story really is, the Druidic resistance against him was mostly done for. The chief bard even turned to Christ, and soon after, King Lyre gave Patrick and his companions permission to preach Christ throughout the entirety of Ireland. In the year 461, after a full life of ministry, Patrick died in Saul, the location of the first church he planted on the Emerald Isle. He's never been canonized by the Catholic Church as a saint, but he has been venerated from Ireland all the way to Rolla, Missouri. He and his companions had founded over 300 churches and baptized over 100,000 Irish. As the Druids predicted, the fire could not be stopped and spread over the whole of Ireland. So, before you get ready to plunge into that keg of ale and then wake up in a forest 4 days later clad only in your underwear, don't suck it. Don't do it. Instead, think of Patrick, the boy slave who turned missionary that changed a nation and then the world through the power of Christ. I'm Elijah, and I'm a Protestant. And this is a Catholic and a Protestant Walk into a Bar SaintCast. Till next time.